The wind screamed through the skeletal remains of what used to be downtown Chicago. Burned-out buildings stood like tombstones, and the streets were choked with rusted cars, scattered belongings, and the lingering stench of death. A thick haze blanketed the skyline, hiding the sun, as if even it had turned its back on what was left of the world. From the observation post on top of the old Marshall High School, Captain Alara Vance watched the horizon through a cracked pair of binoculars. The city had been quiet for too long, too still. That's what worried her. In this new world, silence wasn't peace. It was the whisper before the scream. "Alara, you seeing this?" came a voice over her comm, low and tense. It was Sergeant Reyes, posted on the western watchtower. She raised the binoculars again. In the far distance, at the edge of the safe zone's outer perimeter, a cloud of dust stirred. It wasn't wind. It moved with purpose. "Movement confirmed," she said. "Could be a scout herd." "No way," Reyes responded. "That's too fast. They're running." Alara's stomach dropped. Runners. The evolved strain. Not the slow, shambling corpses of the first wave, these were agile, coordinated, and terrifyingly intelligent. Humanity had learned the hard way not to underestimate them. She clicked over to the internal channel. "All personnel, this is Captain Vance. We may have incoming. I want all perimeter teams armed and ready. Tier 2 alert. And get the civilians to lockdown shelters. Now." Below her, the once bustling survivor compound roared into motion. People ran, some with military precision, others with the frantic energy of those who had already lost too much. Loudspeakers blared evacuation protocols. Children clutched backpacks. Parents barked names. Gun turrets rotated toward the outer gates. At the edge of the safe zone, near the collapsed I-90 overpass, a dust plume became forms, dozens of them, sprinting like predators. Emaciated, blood-covered, and horrifyingly fast. Their eyes burned with a sick, greenish hue, and their claws scraped against the pavement. "Alara," shouted Reyes. "They're coming through Sector 12. "No. That can't be, Sector 12 has. It's breached." They tunneled through. They knew where to dig. The world seemed to tilt. That section had been fortified for years, considered impenetrable. Only someone on the inside could have known the weak points. Traitor. The word slammed into her like a bullet. "Delta Squad to the breach site, now," she shouted. "Reyes, fall back to the second wall. Don't let them spread through the compound." Static answered her. Alara to Reyes. "Respond. Respond." Still nothing. Across the compound, gunfire erupted, short controlled bursts turning into desperate, chaotic volleys. Alara grabbed her rifle and bolted down the stairs, 2 steps at a time. Inside the school building, soldiers and civilian volunteers alike moved in coordinated panic, their training clashing with raw fear. In the main corridor, she caught sight of Dr. Marin, the compound's chief virologist, clutching a secure case and being escorted by 2 guards. "Alara," he called, his eyes wide. "They were waiting for us. This isn't a random attack. It's planned." She didn't have time to ask how he knew, but the weight in his voice was enough. "I'm getting you to the bunker," she said. "That case better have something useful in it." Marin nodded grimly. "It does. But we'll only have one chance to use it." Outside, chaos reigned. The horde had made it through the first wall and were flooding into the outer yards. Screams rang out as defenders fell, some dragged into the shadows kicking and screaming. Others never had time to react. Alara spotted Reyes, or what was left of him, his body broken, propped against a wall near the second barricade. His blood formed a slick trail on the pavement, but his hand was still clenched around a detonator. He'd held them off as long as he could. Alara took the detonator and whispered, "Thank you." Then she pressed it. A fireball tore through the breach, collapsing the tunnel and igniting a dozen of the creatures. The force rattled the compound, but it bought them time. A minute, maybe less. Elara turned to the surviving defenders gathering behind the second barricade. Their eyes were hollow but fierce. "This isn't the end," she said. "Not yet. We hold this line. For the dead. For the living. For what's left." And with that, she raised her rifle, leveled it at the oncoming tide of death, and pulled the trigger. The final war for humanity's survival had begun. Let me know when you're ready for part 2. Night fell like a curtain over the compound, but rest never came. The fires from the breach still burned, casting flickering light on the twisted remains of the fallen, human and infected alike. The air was thick with smoke, gunpowder, and the metallic scent of blood. Inside the central command bunker, Elara stood over a map table littered with coordinates, attack paths, and failed perimeter marks. She hadn't slept in over 30 hours, but sleep was a luxury they could no longer afford. Across from her, Dr. Marin placed the metallic case on the table and opened it with trembling hands. Inside was a syringe filled with a glowing blue serum. "This is what we've been working on in Lab Echo," he said quietly. "A prototype inhibitor. It doesn't cure them, but it slows neural decay and inhibits rage." Elara's brow furrowed. "You're telling me this controls them?" "Temporarily," Marin replied. "Maybe long enough to learn more. Or turn them against each other. That's a dangerous maybe. Before he could respond, Lieutenant Cora Jennings entered briskly, her uniform spattered with blood. "We found something," she said. "You need to see this." Elara followed her through the lower levels of the compound to one of the security chambers. There, on a monitor, was footage taken from a motion-triggered drone stationed near the breach, about 30 minutes before the attack. They watched in silence as a man, dressed in a ragged uniform, crawled through the shadows and planted something metallic in the ground by the fence, a beacon. A few seconds later, he looked up at the drone. His face was unmistakable. Private Milo Vance. Elara's younger brother. Declared missing 6 months ago, presumed dead during a recon mission into the red zones. Her knees almost gave out. "Impossible," she murmured. Cora paused the footage. "We ran facial recognition 3 times. It's him. He led them here." Dr. Marin shook his head. "Or he was being controlled. We've seen signs of infection that allow partial retention of memory and function. What if this is something new?" Elara stared at the screen. Her brother's face, haunted, hollow, but alive. The idea of him being a traitor clashed with every memory she had. He had once been a kind soul, the kind who gave his rations to kids and volunteered for the most dangerous missions. But in this world, even the kindest hearts were expendable. "Elara," Cora said gently, "we need to assume there's a breach in our command structure. Someone gave him access codes. Someone inside." That hit even harder. Trust was now a liability. She turned back to the table and took a breath. "We move at dawn. I want a full recon sweep of the red zone ruins, especially near the beacon drop site. And I want all ranking officers tested for cognitive degradation. If we've got infected passing as human, I need to know yesterday." Cora hesitated. "Including yourself?" Elara nodded. "Especially me." Just then, alarms blared again. Not from the outer perimeter, this time, from inside the medical wing. They rushed there in seconds, weapons raised. Inside, a soldier lay thrashing on a gurney, his veins black and pulsing. A nurse screamed as he lunged upward, teeth bared, but Elara dropped him with a single shot to the head. Blood sprayed across the walls. "What the hell?" Cora muttered. Marin pushed forward, eyes wide. "That's one of the patrol soldiers. He wasn't bit." The realization dawned like thunder, the infection had evolved again. No bites. No scratches. Just proximity, or worse, airborne vectors. "We need to seal this place," Elara ordered. "Now. And get me a sample of his blood. If this thing is in the air, we need to know how fast it spreads." Marin's expression was grim. "And if it's already spread?" Elara looked toward the reinforced doors sealing the medical bay. Beyond them, people waited. People trusted them to lead. Then we've already lost, she whispered. Unless we find a way to fight smarter. End of part 2. The sterile smell of antiseptic mingled with the acrid smoke drifting from the fires outside. Inside the sealed medical bay, tension was suffocating. Dr. Marin carefully extracted a vial of dark crimson blood from the fallen soldier's arm. The veins in the sample pulsed faintly, as if alive. He placed it under a microscope, eyes scanning every flicker, every anomaly. Elara stood by the doorway, her rifle resting but ready, every muscle coiled tight. What do you see? Marin frowned. The virus has mutated. It's not just transmitted through bites anymore, it's airborne, but selectively airborne. It seems to activate only under stress or elevated adrenaline. Elara's breath caught. So being calm keeps you safe? For now, Marin replied. But if fear or panic spreads, the infection could explode. Outside the bay, the compound buzzed with nervous energy. Rumors had already begun to ripple through the ranks, whispers of spies, infected within their own. People avoided eye contact, clutching their weapons a little tighter. In the command room, Lieutenant Cora Jennings coordinated perimeter defenses, her voice steady despite the growing chaos. Elara, we've confirmed 2 more officers showing early signs of cognitive degradation. We've quarantined them but... Have you tested everyone yet? Elara interrupted sharply. We're working through it. But the symptoms are subtle at first. Memory loss, irritability, aggression. Elara swallowed. I don't like the sound of that. Get me a full report on the test results as soon as possible. We can't afford mistakes. As the night deepened, Elara made her way back to the observation post. She stared out at the horizon, where the flickering lights of patrols roamed the ruins beyond the compound. A sudden movement caught her eye, a shadow darting between broken walls. She raised her rifle, heart pounding. Identify yourself, she shouted. No answer. The figure moved closer, too fast, too fluid. Elara squeezed the trigger. The figure collapsed, but not before snarling, a horrifying mix of human and something else. The green glow in its eyes confirmed it. Elara lowered her weapon, hands trembling. God help us, she whispered. Her calm crackled to life. Elara, this is Reyes, a voice said faintly. The line was weak, but unmistakable. I'm alive. Need evac. Coordinates incoming. Her heart leapt. Reyes. Somehow, against all odds, he was alive. We'll get you out, she promised. Suddenly, the bunker trembled, a massive explosion rocked the eastern wall. Sirens blared as power flickered. Cora's voice cut through the chaos. They're attacking again. This time, it's not a breach, they're tunneling under us. Elara felt the cold grip of dread tighten. They weren't just fighting zombies anymore. They were fighting the collapse of hope itself. End of part 3. Ready for part 4 whenever you are. Want me to keep the suspense growing? The ground trembled again, deeper this time, a reminder that the enemy was relentless and patient. The tunnel beneath the eastern wall was no accident, it was a calculated strike aimed at the very heart of the compound. Elara sprinted toward the secondary command post, the echo of distant explosions vibrating beneath her boots. Around her, the surviving defenders scrambled to reinforce the walls, erect makeshift barricades, and tend to the wounded. But with every passing second, the line between safety and annihilation blurred. We need engineers down at the eastern wall, now. Elara barked into her comm, voice cutting through the growing chaos. Set charges. If that tunnel breaches, we blow it and everything above with it. Lieutenant Cora appeared at her side, face grim but resolute. The seismic sensors are picking up more movement underground. They're digging fast, but it's not just them. Elara narrowed her eyes. What do you mean, not just them? Something else, Cora replied. The tunnel walls are collapsing faster than they should. It's as if the earth itself is unstable, like the infection is eating away at the soil and concrete. Elara's heart sank. The infection wasn't just a virus anymore, it was a force reshaping the world on a molecular level. If the ground itself was compromised, the compound's days were numbered. Prepare the evac routes, Elara ordered. If we lose this place, we'll have to fall back to Sector Omega. No one gets left behind. Suddenly, a burst of gunfire erupted nearby. A squad of infected, faster and more coordinated than before, emerged from a cracked sewer grate. Their eyes burned with a predatory hunger. Elara raised her rifle and fired, each shot precise, but the numbers were overwhelming. "Fall back," she shouted, covering the retreat with bursts of fire. As the team withdrew, Elara noticed something that froze her blood. One of the infected was clutching a small device, a radio transmitter, blinking with a faint red light. "Who's controlling them?" she muttered. In the distance, the ruined city seemed to pulse with an eerie life of its own, as if the infection had become an unseen conductor orchestrating a symphony of destruction. Back inside the compound's war room, Dr. Marin was running frantic tests on the blood samples. "Elara," he called out, voice tense, "there's something you need to see." She stepped over, exhaustion tugging at her limbs. Marin pointed to a screen showing a digital model of the virus. "It's adapting. Evolving faster than anything we've seen. It's learning from our defenses, responding to threats, almost as if it's sentient." Elara felt a cold shiver. The fight wasn't just for survival anymore, it was against a thinking, evolving enemy. The radio crackled to life suddenly, Rhea's voice barely audible. "Command, this is Reyes. I've located the transmitter. It's connected to a central hive. We've got a chance if we hit it first." Elara clenched her fists. One last fight remained. "Then we take it to them," she said. End of Part 4. The first light of dawn filtered weakly through the ash-filled sky. The compound was battered, exhausted, but far from broken. Elara stood at the command center's entrance, gazing out toward the ruins where Rhea's last message had pinpointed the hive, the dark, pulsing heart of the infection's network. "This is it," she whispered. "If we destroy that transmitter, maybe we can stop this nightmare before it consumes everything." Lieutenant Cora checked her gear. "Recon teams report heavy infected patrols. It's a fortress out there." Elara nodded. "We don't have a choice. We hit it fast, hard, and precise." The strike team moved out silently through crumbling streets, the weight of their mission heavy on every shoulder. The city's skeleton cast long shadows, hiding dangers in every alley. Suddenly, a guttural howl shattered the stillness. The infected were ready. Bullets tore through the air as the two sides clashed in brutal close quarters. Elara's rifle barked fire as she fought through the swarming masses, each step forward hard won. Through the chaos, she caught sight of Reyes, limping but alive, leading a small squad. "Elara," he yelled, panting. "The transmitter's in an old subway station beneath the city. We've got to get down there." They fought their way to the rusted entrance, descending into the darkness below. The stale air was thick with decay and something worse, an unnatural hum vibrating through the tunnels. Marin's serum was their only hope. Elara's squad carried the blue vials, ready to deploy on any infected that might be subdued and studied. Deep inside the subway, walls pulsed with a faint green glow, like the infection was alive and aware. There, Reyes pointed to a device embedded in the wall, a grotesque fusion of metal and flesh, thrumming with power. Elara raised her rifle. "Destroy it." "On my mark." But before they could act, the ground trembled violently. From the shadows emerged a monstrous figure, the Hive Warden. Towering, with razor-sharp claws and eyes that burned brighter than any fire, it roared, a sound that shook the very tunnel walls. The fight was desperate. Elara's team struggled to hold the creature back as Reyes worked to set explosives around the transmitter. "Elara, cover me!" Reyes shouted, fingers fumbling with the detonator. The Hive Warden lunged, knocking Reyes aside. Elara stepped forward, firing round after round, each shot chipping away at the creature's armor-like skin. Time slowed. Reyes hit the button. The tunnel erupted in a thunderous explosion, flames and debris filling the air. When the dust settled, the hive warden lay motionless, and the transmitter was destroyed. Ilera and Reyes, battered and bloodied, looked at each other, both knowing this victory was only the beginning. End of Part 5. Ready to move on to Part 6? The explosion echoed through the tunnels long after the last embers faded. For a moment, silence fell like a blanket, heavy and thick. The hive was destroyed, but the cost was written in blood and exhaustion on every face. Ilera leaned against the cold concrete wall, breathing hard. Reyes limped beside her, clutching a deep wound in his side. "We did it," he whispered, voice strained. "We actually did it." Ilera shook her head, eyes scanning the darkness beyond the blast radius. "Maybe. But this doesn't end here." Back on the surface, the compound awaited news with bated breath. The destruction of the transmitter severed the infected's communication network, causing chaos within their ranks. Swarms scattered aimlessly, losing their coordination. It was the first real advantage humanity had seized in months. But as dawn broke, a new danger emerged. Dr. Marin's voice crackled over the comm, urgent and shaky. "Captain Vance, you need to see this. The virus, it's changing again. More rapidly than before." Ilera joined him in the lab, where monitors displayed real-time viral growth patterns. "Look here," Marin said, pointing at a spike on the screen. "The virus is integrating with human DNA more aggressively. It's creating hybrids, part infected, part human." Ilera swallowed hard. "Hybrids? Like Reyes?" Reyes stiffened, eyes flickering with uncertainty. Marin nodded grimly. "It's why some infected retain memories, intelligence, even loyalty. But they're unpredictable and dangerous." Ilera's mind raced. "We have to find them before they find us." As the compound fortified its defenses, an urgent transmission arrived. Coordinates marked a survivor outpost beyond the quarantine zone. Cora's voice was steady but urgent. "They're asking for help. Could be a trap." Ilera considered the options. Ignoring the call could mean abandoning allies, or worse, missing a chance to understand this new threat. "We'll send a team," she decided. "But we move cautiously. This fight isn't just for survival anymore. It's for the future." End of Part 6. Let me know when you want Part 7. The convoy crawled through cracked highways littered with abandoned vehicles and skeletal trees stripped bare by the infection's relentless march. Dust rose in clouds behind the battered trucks as they neared Haven 17, a survivor outpost that appeared on no official maps, an island of fragile humanity in the sea of decay. Ilera's fingers tightened on the steering wheel as the convoy slowed. The outpost was surrounded by makeshift barricades, rusted metal sheets, barbed wire, and salvaged concrete blocks, and a series of watchtowers manned by vigilant, tired eyes. The air was thick with tension, a brutal silence that spoke of suspicion and desperation. No friendly greetings welcomed them, only the cold stare of survivors who had learned to trust no one. Lieutenant Cora scanned the perimeter with a wary gaze. "This place feels like a powder keg. One spark, and it all blows." Ilera nodded, her gut nodding. "Stay sharp. We don't know who or what we're walking into." The convoy halted just outside the heavy steel gates. After a tense moment, the gate creaked open, revealing a cluster of wary figures armed to the teeth. Among them stood the leader, a tall man with a weathered face etched by countless battles, a jagged scar tracing down one cheek. His eyes were sharp and calculating. "Captain Vance," the man said, voice gravelly but steady. "We've been expecting you." Inside the outpost, the air smelled of sweat, smoke, and something darker, fear. Makeshift tents and hastily erected shelters crowded the uneven streets. Survivors moved with cautious purpose, exchanging hushed words and guarded glances. Ilera's team was led to a central meeting area, where plans and maps were spread out over a rough wooden table. Reports of infected hybrids, Creatures bearing the virus but retaining unsettling fragments of human intelligence, were no longer rumors here, they were the harsh reality. One of the outpost's scouts, a wiry woman named Tessa, spoke quietly but with urgency. The hybrids are different. They're faster, smarter. They work together. And worse, some seem to listen to a figure we call the Shepherd. Ilara's brow furrowed. The Shepherd? He's not just controlling the hybrids, Tessa said. He's organizing them, directing attacks, gathering them for something bigger. The room fell silent. The weight of this information pressed heavily on everyone present. We need to find this Shepherd, Ilara said. And fast. If he's the one pulling the strings, stopping him could be our best chance to turn the tide. Cora looked over the maps, tracing routes with a finger. Intelligence points to an underground facility, old military tunnels beneath the city ruins. If he's operating from there, that's where we strike. Ilara nodded. Prepare a strike team. I'll lead. As plans were drawn, a low rumble shook the ground. Outside, an explosion erupted, lighting up the horizon with flickering flames. The infection's chaos was never far away. The outpost's defenders scrambled to their stations, but Ilara remained focused on the mission ahead. That night, the strike team moved out under cover of darkness, the ruined city swallowing them in shadows. The tunnels below were cold and silent, lit only by the weak beams of flashlights cutting through thick dust. The walls were scarred by time and neglect, but signs of recent activity marked their progress: discarded equipment, strange symbols smeared in blood, and the faint hum of power equipment somewhere deeper. Every step brought a new tension, the feeling of unseen eyes watching, waiting. Suddenly, the corridor opened into a massive chamber bathed in sickly green light. Biological growths, twisted, pulsing masses of infected tissue, clung to the walls and ceiling like grotesque webs. In the center stood the Shepherd. His figure was gaunt and pale, eyes glowing unnaturally, a cruel smile twisting his lips. "You came," he said softly. "I was beginning to wonder if humanity still had the will to fight." Ilara raised her rifle. "Your reign ends here. We're putting an end to this nightmare." The Shepherd's smile deepened. "You don't understand what you're fighting for. The virus is evolution, the next stage. Resistance is futile." The team tensed as the hybrids guarding the chamber stirred, their snarls rising. "Hold the line," Ilara ordered. "We fight for humanity. No matter the cost." The battle that followed was brutal and chaotic. Bullets met claw and teeth, screams cut through the humid air, and the underground facility shook with the force of the fight. Amid the frenzy, Ilara caught sight of Reyes, pushing through the crowd toward the Shepherd, his eyes burning with conflicted fury. "Reyes, no!" she shouted, but it was too late. With a savage cry, Reyes engaged the Shepherd in close combat, the clash of blade against claw echoing through the tunnels. The fight was more than physical, it was a battle for the soul of a man caught between two worlds. Ilara fought beside her team, firing, defending, surviving. Every second mattered. As the struggle reached its peak, the Shepherd faltered, distracted by Reyes' relentless assault. Ilara took aim, fired, and the Shepherd staggered, collapsing onto the floor in a heap. With his fall, the hybrid's coordination faltered. Confusion spread through them, and the fight began to turn. Exhausted but determined, Ilara's team pushed forward, driving the remaining infected back. The underground chamber fell silent once more, save for the ragged breathing of the survivors. Ilara looked down at Reyes, who lay wounded but alive, his eyes meeting hers with a flicker of hope. "This isn't the end," she said softly. "But it's a start." Back at Haven 17, as dawn's first light pierced the horizon, survivors gathered, battered but alive. Ilara knew the road ahead was long and fraught with danger, but for the first time in a long while, there was hope, a fragile, flickering ember against the darkness. "We fight on," she vowed. "For humanity's future. For the world we still believe in." End of Part 7. Moonlight filtered weakly through cracks in the ruined underground laboratory, casting long, flickering shadows that danced across broken equipment and shattered glass. The stale, chemical air was heavy, tainted with a metallic tang of blood and something more sinister, the unmistakable scent of death and decay. Illyra's team moved cautiously, every step echoing in the hollow corridors. Their breaths were shallow, weapons poised, nerves taut. The weight of what lay ahead pressed on them all, the culmination of months of fear, loss, and desperate fighting. Somewhere in this labyrinthine wreckage was the Shepherd, the shadowy figure controlling the infected hybrids, part human, part monster, who had pushed humanity to the brink. Ahead, monitors flickered with erratic green and red lights, displaying errant data streams and grotesque imagery of infected subjects. Strange biological growths pulsed on the walls like living veins. The infection had not only spread through flesh and blood but had infested the very structure they now walked through. "We move fast and clean," Illyra whispered, her voice barely audible over the hum of malfunctioning machinery. "No room for mistakes." Lieutenant Cora nodded grimly. "No promises on what we'll find. But this ends tonight." They rounded a corner and found themselves face to face with a tall, gaunt figure standing in the center of a dimly lit chamber. He was thin to the point of skeletal, eyes glowing with a cold, unnatural light. He smiled, a cruel, empty smile that sent a chill down their spines. "So, Captain Vance," the man said smoothly, his voice echoing off the concrete walls. "I've been expecting you." Illyra leveled her rifle. "You're the Shepherd. Why do this? Why turn people into monsters?" The Shepherd's smile widened, almost proud. "You don't understand. This virus, this evolution, is humanity's next step. Weakness is a relic of the past. We are forging a stronger future, one where survival isn't dictated by fragile bodies, but by adaptation and strength. By turning them into rage-fueled killers?" Illyra spat. "This isn't evolution. It's extinction." He shook his head slowly. "Extinction is merely survival's price. You fight change, but change is inevitable. The old world dies so the new one can be born. You're just too blind to see it." Before Illyra could respond, the alarm screamed to life, filling the chamber with a piercing cacophony. From the shadows surged a wave of infected hybrids, faster, more aggressive, and eerily coordinated. Their eyes gleamed with a mixture of rage and confusion, the unnatural control the Shepherd had over them now commanding a deadly assault. "Hold your ground," Illyra barked, raising her rifle and firing into the first charging figure. The air filled with the staccato rattle of gunfire and the guttural snarls of the infected. The battle was fierce and desperate. Bullets tore through malformed flesh, but more kept coming, relentless and brutal. The tunnels echoed with the screams of the living and the dead, each second a painful reminder of the razor-thin line between survival and death. Amid the chaos, Reyes fought fiercely beside Illyra, his own struggle internal and far from over. His eyes flashed with a tortured hunger, the hybrid virus inside him clawing to take control. But his will was strong, anchored by memories of what he had been and what he still wanted to be. Suddenly, Reyes broke from the fight and charged directly at the Shepherd. "You're not my master." Reyes growled, voice low and fierce. Before the Shepherd could react, Reyes plunged a jagged blade deep into his chest. The Shepherd's eyes widened in shock as he stumbled backward, crashing to the floor. With the Shepherd's death, the eerie connection controlling the hybrids snapped. Confusion rippled through the infected as their rage began to fade, replaced by flickers of awareness and hesitation. Illyra lowered her weapon, exhaustion washing over her. "It's over, for now." As dawn broke outside, Illyra's team limped back to the surface, bruised and battered but alive. The compound welcomed them with wary hope. Back inside the command bunker, Dr. Marin was already analyzing the latest data. "The virus is contained, but it's changed. These hybrids, they're unpredictable. We need to stay vigilant." Illyra looked out toward the horizon where the first pale light of day pierced the gloom. The sky was tinged with fragile orange and pink, a fragile promise of new beginnings. "This fight isn't over," she said quietly. "But we've taken the first step. For humanity. For what's left." Her voice was steady, but inside, she knew the truth. the war against the infection was far from finished. The virus would evolve. The infected would adapt. And somewhere out there, new threats waited in the shadows. But as long as the last defenders stood, and as long as hope endured, humanity still had a chance. Alara tightened her grip on her rifle, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. "We fight," she said simply. "Because giving up is not an option." The sun rose fully now, burning away the darkness, if only for a while. End of Part 8. If you want, I can help with intros, outros, or even teaser scripts to keep your audience hooked for the whole series. Would you like that?